Hi guys, it's Artem here, and it's another episode of Danielians Ventures podcast, where I interview interesting people, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders in different industries. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome John from Local SEO Search Agency in Toronto, Canada. Hi, John. Nice to have you on the podcast.
Hi, Artem. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share some insights with some of your audience members this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's awesome to have you. When we actually talked a little bit in email, you mentioned that you kind of focus on local SEO, and I thought that would be a really interesting topic to talk about, since everybody and their mother are talking about SEO, but local SEO, that's that kind of caught me, off guard a bit. I thought that'd be really interesting to talk about. So, what do you really mean? What does your agency do, and how local SEO is different from traditional SEO.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll just take a step back actually in
Hmm.
time. I started my agency back in 2013, so not too long ago. So
Oh
it's been
yeah,
around for about 7 years. But
great.
prior to working and starting this agency, I actually worked at Yellow Pages Group, which is, if a lot of the listeners don't know, it's a printed phone book that went to
Yeah.
every single home business and apartment, etc. But on a more traditional level, so it was actually delivered to homes, and
Yeah.
people, when they were ready to buy, they would go through the categories, pick it up. So I was selling ad space, and I had a lot of clients in the local market.
Hmm.
Um, and that's where I came from. So I worked there for 5 years. I worked with over a couple thousand local business owners, small, medium size, ones that are family run, that actually worked on their business for not just decades, but maybe even generations, right?
Hmm.
So traditionally, that's how business owners operated. They got to know their local community, they got to know what customers they wanted to go after, and their absolute needs, right? And how they fit in the local landscape and ecosystem. So what I, learned over the years and near the end of my career at Yellow Pages was people are just frustrated with spending a lot of money and not getting the same returns that they used to get. What I mean by returns is when you put in $1, I want $5 in return,
Yeah.
right? So the higher the return on investment, the better it is for all advertisers in any form of mediums. So at the Yellow Pages, near the last 2 years, every time I went to see a customer, they were telling me, I wanted to, why should I continue with you? First off, I'm getting
Yeah.
not as the same amount of calls. It's not even breaking even. Where are people going? I hear a lot about Google, and why should I not spend money there when I know more and more people, and even myself is spending more time, navigating, searching. So at that time, smartphones weren't taking off yet. Internet
Hmm.
was not as fast as it is today, like 4G LTE, right? And it's going to go to 5G soon.
Yeah.
So it was still like infancy, right? Where tablets were starting to pick up, and email was still the medium of choice, right? So now today, I mean, you look at it, there's apps, there's so many different social channels, right? From YouTube content to Facebook to Instagram to Twitter to whatever it may be. But then there's also different forms of media, right? Like voice, as well as podcasts, as well as written, as well as infographics, and of course the video, right? So with SEO, it's actually transitioned a lot over the last couple of years, and it continues to pivot. Like you just gotta adapt to change, right? Of what the users are looking in terms of the type of format that they're comfortable with. So 7 years of doing this, and the real reason was I work with a lot of small, medium-sized businesses. I am one myself, and that's where my connection is and my values are. I really want to support the small business owners because they service a very good market, and majority of the businesses in the world actually are small, medium-sized businesses. And if you can help your own people, everyone wins together, right?
That sounds very good, almost like a commercial, but helping each other and all that. Of course, it makes sense, and I think a lot of small business owners are now, getting pushed by huge companies. I mean, if you think about Booking.com, Amazon, Hotels.com, they buy a lot of ad space on Google, right? They spend a lot of money in SEO, so what can the little guy do? If I have like mom and pops, repair, shop somewhere in Toronto, or be it Helsinki or somewhere else, what can I do if there are always new chains popping up and they have a marketing budget of $500,000 on SEO? And what can I do if my marketing budget is about 2 donuts, maybe in a toilet roll? So what can I do?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, right? You have to stand apart from everyone else. So traditionally, how did your grandparents, if your grandparents were in business, work on a successful business? Well, they took care of their customer base. They understood their market. They understood their competitors. They understood their value proposition and how they differentiate from the big brands, right? So it's very similar to how they operated, and just push it to more digital presence, right? So I always look at foundationally, how do you stand out? What makes you different? So does that mean take care of your customers, increase, understand the price point, the service level, like what is your unique selling proposition, right? And once you determine that, and what I always say is before you venture into SEO, you need to already have a solid foundation of running a good business, not understanding who your ideal customer is, and then so the SEO person or yourself or your agency can understand what kind of client you want to really go after, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without that insight and knowledge, it's very difficult for anyone to project and help you if you can't help and determine what is important to your business.
Yeah, for sure. I think one way though that you can maybe get away from the big competition is if you're like a hairdresser, or I don't know, repair shop or a grocery store, right? Google Maps, I think, offers a lot of opportunity now.
Yes.
Because, for example, I travel a lot. I used to travel a lot. I used to travel a lot before all the negative stuff that happened during last few months. But anyway, when I used to travel, I always needed a space to work during the day. So I go to Google Maps and I search co-working, and
Yes.
I always get really good results. I sort by reviews, and I see additional information on the site, maybe read a few reviews. And I understood, that that's probably the best way nowadays to search for local providers. Google Maps. What do you think? Is it something that everybody can leverage, or have you seen any success with it?
Yeah, definitely. So being localized, we focus on not just the local 3-pack of Google, but also any localized keywords, because
Mm-hmm.
typically the buyer journey will depend on where you want to be displayed on the search, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you know, more and more people are using search and refining their searches and using more long-tailed keywords as opposed to very broad keywords. So the more defined it is, yes, you might not get as much traffic, but it's convertible traffic. And when you hit those type of people, the more likely they're gonna do something like call you or investigate and check out your form is a lot higher. So those are the keywords that you want to go after. But once you determine what you're all about, right? And of course, yes, optimizing your Google My Business, claiming it, verifying it, add images, get reviews, optimizing it to the full extent with categories and everything else. But how do you rank on that map, right? There's a lot of variables, very similar to how traditional SEO was, right? Links, citations, good compressing your images, site speed, as well as all the technical aspects, as well as the on page, all applies. But ultimately it's all about building your authority and trust, right? And positioning yourself as the expert. So whatever you do, you have to know what you're doing in terms of your landscape, know your competitors inside out. So when someone does approach you, you already have all the answers, right? But typically when they approach you, they already don't need to know anything because they already read enough from you. All they care about is price, right? And availability, really. So that's what you're trying to position yourself as in terms of an expert. So don't just focus on, putting it on your website, but Google My Business is an amazing platform. It's their social platform as well, right? You can do Google Posts, just making sure that you're encompassing whatever channels your absolute customers are using to finding you. And that's what you need to uncover as well. And some clients, maybe Facebook is the channel of choice, or Instagram or YouTube or LinkedIn, depending, it doesn't really matter, but you got to uncover that, figure out what your customers are searching, who they are, how they search, where they're at in terms of buying funnel, and then, you know, make sure you emphasize more heavily on that channel.
Yeah. But let's talk maybe about Google My Business, since I think there is a lot of misconceptions and
Yes.
a lot of people don't understand how it works. What do you do with it? And we could get a little bit more practical, since I know you have a lot of knowledge working with many clients and optimizing their presence using Google My Business as one of the factors, obviously, not the sole factor. I think there is no such thing anymore, that one thing, the silver bullet. It doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Everybody is searching for it, but it doesn't exist. You have to do many things.
Exactly.
You have to put a lot of effort. But if you think about it, where does the Google get information for Google My Business profiles? So if you open the company, for example, in Toronto, right, or anywhere, you know, in the world, pretty much nowadays, at some point when people Google for your company using your company name, they will see a Google My Business profile. It will be unclaimed.
Yes.
Basically, it will be created by Google, but nobody is actively managing it. So where do they get the info from in most cases? Is it some
Yeah,
public
usually they're
registry?
scraping. Yeah, they're scraping it from aggregators,
Yeah.
usually like big, huge directory sites. And it
Mm-hmm.
could be Yellow Pages, could be Yelp, it could be Facebook, whatever, wherever it's claimed. So what I always tell people to do is go in, verify it, and claim it yourself first.
Yeah.
That's the absolute most. Then you go into all the directories and make sure it's consistent in terms of your profile, right? Your name,
Yeah.
address, postal code, phone number, all synchronized with the same information, hours of operation, services, so that whoever's looking at different channels and different platforms, different sites, different directories are at least in sync, right? And so
Yeah.
Google recognizes it. As much as you think Google will already know, it's easier for you to make it easy for them to know.
Yeah.
Right? If you know what I mean. Like even on your website, creating a sitemap, making sure that it's easy and crawlable without errors, and it's indexable, and it's fast, and it's easy in terms of like navigation, and you know, the URLs, everything. Make it simple so that your users have a good user experience, but also Google can have a better user experience. So once you claim it, then of course you have to optimize it. What does that mean, right? Make sure it's consistent and make sure it's by your corporate name. Do not keyword stuff, do not spam, work by the rules, play by the rules, so that you build a good solid brand, so that people in your industry, your competitors, know that you're playing fair, right? The ones that aren't fair, well, you could report them, right? And you know who are kind of not playing by the rules by when you start seeing the spam always appear, right? Then how do you rank, right? Of course, you need that vertical, the niche that you want to target. Put that in, because that's probably the most important portion of it, the category, right? So that's pulled by a lot of variations of keywords that Google is looking at in terms of keyword research, right? Batching it. So once you have that, of course, you put your description in, put your website, and then it all depends on, you know, other factors like reviews are very strong indicators, citations, links are very strong indicators still, and making sure your website is performing and positioning itself as an expert and leader. And that's where traditional SEO comes. So there's a lot of correlations between the two, even though people think there isn't. I still believe links are a very strong correlation, because how else does Google see if you're a credible source? Well, you're writing in different, you know, publications, you're speaking, you're doing other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more you're out there and more credible you become, that's where Google can see signals on your influence, right? So I'm not sure, is there things that you wanted to discuss in
Of course.
particular?
I think it's a good intro, but like, you know, I worked with many clients, and maybe since I have now expert here, I could maybe ask you for about a few questions that they had, you know, trouble with. So first of all, you claim it, and there is a claiming process, right? You have to identify that you actually either a business owner, or you have access to the mailbox, stuff like that. Sometimes the claiming process is just, you know, as easy as getting an email, getting a phone call, but sometimes Google sends a postcard to the location, right? And you know, sometimes it just doesn't come. And Google is notoriously bad when it comes to reaching out for support. So when there is something,
Yes.
yeah, I know. When when things are not just working, have you seen, were you ever able to reach out to Google? Have you ever received anything?
Yeah, so typically, so the claiming process is obviously the first thing you
Yeah.
need to verify, right? Make sure
Yeah.
that you have full ownership and
Yeah.
the owner has ownership. So
Yeah.
if you cannot claim via phone, usually it then becomes a mail. They send it to your physical mail at your office, right?
Yeah.
Usually it arrives within 10 business days and you have 30 days to actually verify it. Once you go in and verify it, and if it doesn't appear in 30 days, then you got to start that process over again. But don't go in and reissue it, because then you're starting from scratch again, right? Then they're going
Okay.
to
Okay.
post up
So
two.
it
So
resets.
wait.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Just like when you do a request on Google, never go back in and request it again, because they already have a ticket, right? So you need to just wait. And yes, it's frustrating because there's a queue, and sometimes during this COVID, um, it's a lot longer than usual because
Can it be
they
like 30
rely.
days, 60
It
days?
could be longer now, right?
Oh,
With a
really?
request, because of the load, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
spending more time in front of a computer, making changes, looking at what's going on. There's a lot of spam. There's a lot less people actually going in doing the, you know, fixing
Perform.
of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Performing it in the duties, right? So yes, they outsource it. They also have a lot of people that are contributors that go in and fix it themselves as well, right? So understanding the process of what Google has to go through,
Yeah.
and what once you verify it, then at least you have free range to go in and modify your name, your address, your telephone, your hours, your posts, right?
Yeah.
And my suggestion is make your posts very similar to like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Make sure that you're posting at least once a week, because you can have multiple posts in the week, but after a week, it kind of just drops off.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is make sure it's top of mind, because if it's a branded search, someone's looking you by name, that featured snippet, which is that knowledge panel on the right hand side, you can see that you can sort by reviews, your map, your images, and below that it's also posts, right? So it's another place that you can send more content, redirecting to maybe a blog or something that is ownership of your site.
Yeah. Yeah. So very good, very good. But if I, if we go step by step and I kind of get your input on some of the questions and struggles maybe that some of
Sure.
the clients I worked with had, in order to get expert opinion. So sometimes, the name of the Google My Business profile is just the company name, the corporate name, the legal entity name. That's all good and dandy. But what about keyword stuffing? I've seen that happen, So basically, the profile's name is whatever company Ltd, and then there is hairdressing, like beauty salon, whatever. What does Google think about it in general? Is it allowed?
So it's spam. I
Yeah.
would say stick with your branded corporate name.
Yeah.
Anyone could go in and fix it, right? They could report you. Yes, Google doesn't penalize business owners at this time.
Okay.
However, what happens is I'm sure they're keeping track of how many times you have been reported, right?
Okay.
They know a lot more than you think,
Of course.
especially if they're tracking every action, every website that you're going to, how long they stay. There's a lot more to it than you think, right? So my suggestion is play by the rules. Yes, if you see people in your industry, your competitors that are keyword stuffing the company name, or trying to trick the system, writing fake reviews or whatever, like stuff like that, there's things that you can do to report them.
Yeah.
And I would say go about doing that and make that a part of your process, in terms of if you're an agency or you're doing yourself, go in and start cleaning house and making sure you're managing not just your client, but what's going on in your competitive landscape.
Okay, that's good. I'm sure a lot of people in Finland will be thrilled, now they get to go to their competitors and, audit them and their profiles and keep clicking report if they see anything, menacing or,
Yes.
something that doesn't make sense. Very good, very
Yep.
good. So basically I should, have my company name as a
Yes.
title of
Yes.
my profile. That's cool. So
Exactly.
then we go to the boring stuff. So basically there is like opening hours,
Yep.
phone number, that kind of stuff. The yellow pages, side of things, right? Like when you're opening and so forth. But then there are, I guess, new features, as you mentioned. There are posts, there are products and services. You can add those.
Yeah.
You can create a mini website even as well.
Yeah.
And then there is like live chat or like a messaging tool.
Yeah.
So those I think are pretty interesting, and I think very few people use them. Very few local businesses use them. I think a lot of them go in, just adjust the hours, and stuff like that, add basic information. But I haven't seen, for example, if I add products or services, is there added benefit, to adding products and services to my Google business page, or is it just when somebody already landed on my Google, profile and then see additional information about my brand?
Yeah. What I'm thinking is Google wants to get more ownership of every single content piece, and therefore, yes, you should, because people are getting lazier and lazier, and they don't want to click on more and more pages, right? So the less pages they can click on, they find the information right there at their fingertips. The easier it is for you to convert them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the more information you have displayed on the knowledge panel on that Google My Business page, from all the products, services, click to call, messaging, there's even a COVID one right now, right?
Yeah, the
On
COVID banner or something, COVID notification.
notification. There's a lot going on, and there's updates all the time. You have to think about two things, right? Like, how is it benefiting your customers, your absolute customers? If you are selling a very large ticket item, maybe it doesn't benefit you the same level as a small ticket item like coffee, right? So coffee is very transactional, and they just want to order on their phone, app based, click to call, boom. But when it's buying a home, or they're roofing, a big ticket, right?
Yeah.
$5,000-$10,000, they're going to do their due diligence, and that may take you months in terms of the buying cycle and journey, right? So yes, as much as you want to put it there, does it benefit you as much as making sure your website has the updated information? Probably not, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think about the user standpoint, and of course you got to understand what Google's trying to achieve, which is they want to own as much information as possible, even though they can already crawl and index your whole website, right? Scrape it, but they don't have authority, right? Or consent. So they want you to do it, so then they own it.
Okay. So they kind of want to move as much information away from other platforms, be it your own website or Facebook, to their own platform where they can mix and match, put it in Google Shopping, and put it in results and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay.
Because ultimately, you have to think about what Google's ultimate goal is. It's ads, right? They make billions of dollars through their Google search ads, their AdSense, and their advertising network, right? So once they have enough data and they know what website relevance categories, then they can display it at the optimal point of when you're searching, right?
Yeah.
So, and you have to understand also, Google is moving towards people, actually users are not even clicking to websites as much as they used to do, right? They're using voice now. They're using a search. They see what they're looking for. They don't even click on a site anymore. They see everything on the 3-pack. They know, they call, right? Or they book right there. They purchase right there. So you have to understand users' behavior as more so than what Google's looking for, because ultimately, if you understand your customers, then you can pivot and adopt all the new innovative things they're trying to adopt.
Yeah. And I think, with Google moving towards machine learning and artificial intelligence and, smart assistant and stuff like that, I think it kind of makes sense, right? If they own as much information as possible on their own platform, then their assistant, for example, is a lot more smarter, because now assistant could, for example, find pricing for basic services maybe and stuff like that, thanks to Google My Business and so forth. So it kind of, helps them enrich their products. The more information we kind of feed it.
Exactly. And as you know, like more and more people are using voice, right?
Yeah, sure.
And as you know, every home now maybe has Google Home or Alexa or Siri, or right? And they're listening to you more than you think, right? It's just like any
Unfortunately, yes.
smart device, smartphone, they know
Yeah.
more than you think. And yes, is that good or bad? Well, you kind of live with technology. You can't live without it now. People
Yeah.
have the smartphone next to them and they live and breathe it. It's way more powerful than it's ever been.
Mm.
And people, use it, right? And the big thing is it's useful. So you got to live with it. You got to understand what the purpose is and how you can live, purposely with it or not, right? For the benefit of your business or not, right? So if you don't adopt to these new technologies and platforms and different, things going on, then you may be missing out, right? But you also have to understand what your customers are ultimately consuming and how they're consuming. And I always look at foundational, as much as all these new widgets coming up and apps and platforms and social media, like, it doesn't really impact me if you understand how to run a really good business.
Yeah, yeah. If you have the strategy, the processes down, the tools just change a little bit, techniques change, but
Exactly.
still you're trying to provide as much value to the customer as possible, and try to gain as much, monetary value for yourself as possible, but in a way that it makes sense for customer and for you as well. But if we go back to the Google My Business profile, for example, so I think that's really good insight that if you have a small ticket item, then it might make sense to add it to Google My Business profile page. For example, if you have like breakfast or you have some like set pieces that don't change a lot, could be really great. Or if you have some sale going on, and I'm sure there are, even if you have like Shopify or WooCommerce, there even might be some integration you can do so your products are automatically pushed, synced, and so forth. But what about services? So you and me, we operate service-based companies, right? And I'm sure it'll be really bad if our profiles on Google My Business would suck. So what we can do, people who provide services, we don't sell physical goods, should we add our own services to the Google My Business page? And is there benefit in terms of visibility? Like, what about service industry?
I think services, it's not harming you in any ways, right?
Yeah, a lot of things
So
don't harm me. Yeah.
it
But it
really
takes
just
time.
adds value,
Yeah.
right? What I'm saying is it's a layer for Google to determine and makes it easier to recognize what you're doing, right? So the more transparent you are, the better, I feel. The more you give, the better, and the easier it is for the users to determine if they want to click to your website to uncover more, right? With case studies and the actual services. um, it's all about like just making sure that it's robust but complete, right? As much as there's more and more stuff going on, like, yes, if you're a restaurant, you can even tell when it's busy or not, right?
Mhm.
You can connect it with all those Fedoras and all those online Uber Eats and all that
Yeah.
stuff, right? So things that are integrated all the time. And why is this happening? Because the users expect it, and it's the
Yeah.
new generation that you're gearing towards, right? These
Yeah.
are the people growing up in front of a computer and smartphone all day long, right? So
Yeah.
they're consuming it. And just like before, I'm not sure how old you are, but when I grew up, it was more TVs, right? And ads, and it's all about like newspapers and flyers, traditional, right? But today, it's you don't get any ads on online streaming sites, right? YouTube, I hate pop-ups, right? It's all
Yeah.
about like, I want to prevent that from happening and I want to be in control. So that whole buying journey of SEO being controlled versus ad being pushed at people, that's why people are becoming more and more creative. And this whole ad space is always evolving, right? How do you interrupt someone's attention to get them to maybe want or need your services, right? Versus SEO, people understand these are ads and they don't want to click on ads because they want to be in control.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you got pretty personal right there with the age. I think I'm already very, very old, but my wife keeps telling me that, at 37, I think I'm 37, it's not that bad yet. She said, you shouldn't be, shopping for a grave just yet. So yeah, I'm close to 40, and yeah, I remember the times when there wasn't much advertising online and when YouTube didn't have any ads and so forth. And yeah, I guess what you're trying to say is that if you are worthy of people talking about you, a lot of things become a lot less easier, right? So if you deliver something unique, if you have competitive advantage, even SEO is easier, right? Everything is easier. But if you're just like, if you just sell the same commodities that everybody else sell, you don't add anything extra, there is nothing special about service, then basically you will have to pay in order to interrupt people and get them to be interested about you.
Exactly. Position yourself as an
Yeah.
expert, right? You understand what makes you unique. What's your unique selling proposition? What's your value prop? And people will see right through you,
Yeah.
and know, right, if you actually have a good digital presence or not.
Yeah.
And if you're not, then you got to start building that, because you're already behind, right? So I would say, of course, understand your business, understand how you differentiate, and start working on a good profile. It may take time. It may take you years to run a good business, right?
Of course.
And people, and that's, I think, the problem with this industry, a lot of the digital industries, where they see some videos, they see some feeds on Facebook, and they're like, oh, someone made $100,000 in a week, right? It's like, it just doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's great that that person did. Out of a million people, how many actually did that, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they see it and they make it sound so easy. And yes, it's an ad and they're trying to sell a course,
Yeah, of
right?
course. Of course.
So it's like
Drop
all
shipping,
that.
man.
So all these things are, yes, it may sound great and they might take your life savings, don't get me wrong, because
Yeah.
they're selling this course that brings no value, and they're trying to get you in their system, right? Or drip funnel or campaign. So, understand, read, be informed, right? Educate yourself so that you make the right decisions, right? And that's what we're all about as SEOers, right? Like, yes, it's a very cluttered space. It's a lot of unknowns, but you have to understand it all before you make your right decisions, right? And you've been in the space, so you get it.
Yeah, of course, of course. And I think if you're a small business owner, the best investment you can do is educating yourself. I think that's because in the beginning you don't have the funds. So, for example, if you hire an SEO company, agency specifically, that has copywriters, technical, people, and so forth, it's not going to be $500 that you're gonna, spend monthly. It's going to be a substantial amount. But if you put that $500 into educating yourself, that's a lot of SEO books, a lot of good courses, and like Google Garage has a lot of good courses on SEO. I think it's just you putting in the time. Um, I think most of the information is there online for free. I guess even if you hire an agency, right? If you know the basics of SEO, you will be able to choose a better agency because you will be able to talk the lingo and you will understand the metrics and so forth. And also you will be kind of able to, see if they're doing anything. Because in many cases, I've seen customers who pay about 10 to maybe like 20,000 euros, a month to SEO agency, and then they get a fancy report, but they don't really understand it. They just assume that this is a big company, everybody trusts them, they're doing something right.
I totally agree, right? Because as a business owner, you're busy. You're pulled up, left, right, and center, from
Yeah,
operations, sales and marketing, accounting, to bookkeeping, to you name it, right?
yeah, of course,
Um, everything matters, and of course, you can't do everything right
of
and the
course.
best of your abilities, right? So be educated to an extent where then you can ask the right questions and be informed, because the challenge is, what is going to move the needle the most for your business, right? You're going to invest money on people, or you're going to invest it on companies to help you speed up the process, right? And hopefully shrink time so that you can get to a better point in your life faster, right?
Yeah,
So this is whole thing about business, right? Learning about what works and what doesn't. It may take you years, and don't think about weeks and days and months. I mean, you look at our grandparents, they worked in business for generations. It's not everyone that's going to be successful. And what does success mean to everyone anyways? Does it mean making $20,000 a year, 100,000 a year, $1 million a year. It all depends on where you're at and where you want to be at, right? So don't compare to others. Make your own plan, make your own journey, and make sure that whoever you work with or do your own due diligence. There's so much information out there, especially with internet today at your disposal. There's so many different places to be informed, from videos to podcasts to written, so many sites, from blogs to different paid Slack groups and different groups, forums, associations. Even Google has all the information in the world. You just don't, the challenge is they don't make it easy for you to understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's just it's a bit overwhelming. I think that's the theme nowadays anyway. I think there is too much information, there are too many channels, too many things are moving, changing, evolving when it comes to SEO or online marketing, in general. But if we go back to, Google My Business and kind of like wrap it up, because I think it's really valuable, and because it's a free resource that Google provides, especially to local businesses, I think it's really invaluable, as you mentioned already. But if you think about it, like you mentioned that you should post at least once a week, right? So you have fresh posts, and basically you again should focus on providing value to customers, right? So you're not spamming, you're talking about something really interesting, something that could be beneficial to your customers, to your ideal customers. Then we have like photos, videos. Again, I guess your opinion would be just, I guess, is just populated with content that makes sense, right? So do you place a lot of
Yeah.
value on images in general?
Yeah, real images that impact your real customers, right? Don't
Yeah.
use stock images.
Yeah,
That's
of course
been
not.
kind of blacklisted. So
Yeah.
make sure that everything you do is just as hard as running a real business, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're making it difficult, but the reason there are is there's too much spam and too many ways to trick the system, right?
Yeah.
There's no easy way in being successful, right? There's no easy way to run a good business, as opposed to learn how to run a good business, take care of your customers, understand it, make tons of mistakes, and learn from it, right? And eventually your reputation will be better. People will start referring you, word of mouth, referrals, just cleaning house, which is get third-party reviews. Great. A lot of people are writing reviews now on Google. Make sure you respond to positive and negative. On the post, make sure you personalize as much as possible. Make sure that it's newsworthy
Mm-hmm.
information, time sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
geo-sensitive,
Very
relevant
good.
to your users, right? And make sure the image is corresponding to the content, right? And make sure it actually attracts and grabs the attention. What I mean by everything is make sure your whole campaign is awesome. Your
Mm-hmm.
website's awesome, your profile is awesome, your digital presence is awesome, and therefore you're running an awesome business. And it takes time. Don't get me wrong. It takes years to learn. And over the course of 7 years, I'm still learning. I'm still making mistakes. And I admit it. I let clients know that there's changes happening daily, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen like once a year. Yes, there's a big algo update that
Yeah, of
hits
course.
different industries and niches, but it cleans its house, right? Like, everyone's trying to spam or find a easy way for links, to attract links or keyword stuff, or find a way to embed certain codes in the back end to really help with the ranking, right? All these things are not good habits in terms of running a good business, right?
Yeah. When I was in high school, I had a website where I was doing reviews of Japanese animation, and I earned commission from referring people, to Amazon. And my first negative experience with optimization in general was me just creating white background, setting text to white as well, and
Keyword
doing as much
stuff.
keyword stuffing as I could. But come on, at least I had a good, explanation. I was in high school, stupid and young, but I got removed from Google pretty quick. And then
Yeah,
after that, I filled out a request to be, relisted on Google, but my visibility was never the same. Basically,
of
it,
course.
I just closed the website. So obviously, there are some things that are still working in terms of black hat and, some of the techniques, but there is less and less opportunity, right, to kind of cheat the system.
I would say if you're in it for the long term,
Yeah.
right? Which is, this is what you want to do as a career. You plan on doing this business for the next
Yeah,
5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years, whatever it
yeah,
is, right? Do it the right way, because anyone that's trying to cheat the system, well, yes, they may win short term,
yeah,
but at the end, they're not going to survive over turbulent years. And Google will determine, just like how they figured out that you were kind of cheating the system. It's all about, you know, following their rules, their best practices, their policies, their guidelines to the best of your ability, right? And yes, even like backlinking is deemed illegal, right?
yeah.
But if you're doing it ethically, which is you're providing good content to a different website or association, just you're speaking on behalf of them, right? And you're going out there doing good, and you earn a backlink from that. That is all by the books, right? Like, yes, it's a backlink, but you're not paying for it, you're earning it, right? And that's what it takes. It's hard work to get out there, do these things that deliver small rewards. But that's what SEO is about. You do a lot of things, you keep doing it, and hopefully it takes time for Google to recognize that you're an expert. Just like in anything in life, your competition, it's not easy to build a relationship or get married and have children, right? It's the
For
same thing as
sure.
running a business. It's not easy, right? And you might not be successful your first 2, 3, 5 times, but eventually, if this is what you really want to do, just stick with it, learn from it, make mistakes, and keep pivoting, right?
So if you know, if we are, you know, slowly, you know, moving towards the end of the episode, if you think about a small company, let's imagine like a really small company, you know, maybe there are two employees, you know, maybe a hairdresser, maybe a small restaurant or whatever. So they heard about SEO, right? They heard the stories, you know, the wonderful the wonderful success stories and so forth, but they don't have a lot of time, they don't have a lot of money, you know, so they can't afford to hire an agency. They're pretty tired after work. So what can they do? What would you suggest in terms of concrete advice to a small company, you know, somewhere, wherever, in order to get their feet wet, so to speak? Like, what could
Yeah.
they do to try get some positive impact so that it fuels their interest in, you know, investing more and more?
Yeah. So SEO, it's an investment, right? Like
Yeah,
just like advertising on Google, like Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I would say dabble into the ad space. Invest in a decent website. Yeah, you can do the Wix, Squarespace, GoDaddy website builder. It's
yeah,
affordable, $30, $50 a month. Easy.
for
But you
sure,
have to
for
spend
sure.
that time to populate that information. No one knows your business better than you. So no matter what, you still need to educate yourself enough to know how to put together a decent website. If you're not hiring someone to do it, like a full web dev or designer, you got to go in and do it yourself. Logo design, content creation, understanding that customer, your ideal customer, all that stuff. There's a lot of content out there to learn, but it's like this whole industry has been uncovered and it's been going on for now a couple decades, right? But just like you're in business, there's a lot of people that are in business as well. And why are they in business, right? To support their family, and they have a skill set that people are willing to pay for, right? And they can cook at home, but you're a restaurant, you deliver great food, right? Great. Why would they go to your restaurant, but they can cook the same thing at home at a fraction of the cost? Because you're an expert, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So it's understanding the value of time, money, and trade-off, right? So if you feel that it'll stress you out, you don't know what to do and how to do it properly, I would say investigate on either freelancers, finding a good partner, figure something out to really help you understand and scale to a level where then you have more of a digital presence, right? Because if you're not even comfortable with a computer or
yeah,
social media or platforms and understanding what, websites, because, even myself, I was never technically sound. I was, my background has always been in sales and marketing, right? And I got into this because of a need that I uncovered from my clients, right? And I still am not, a coder. I'm not by any means strong like all these SEOs and developers that I have on my team, right? And that's why I hire them. I
of
pay
course.
for experts to do stuff that I know I can't do and I don't want to do, and I would be stressed out doing, right? So it's the same thing. You know, you can do it yourself, you hire someone, you pay it, but it's all based on your budget, your time value of money. And I always say play around with ads early days to see if there's enough momentum and enough, I would say, of your users consuming information that you see some sort of return. If you start seeing some return, then you know there's people that is your ideal customers there for you to invest further, right?
Okay, that's good. So basically, what you're advising is, get comfortable with at least some basics in terms of
Yes.
digital marketing, at least some basics, and then you have options, right? You can either take it further and start learning yourself and doing yourself, or you can get somebody to help you. It could be an agency, it could be a partner. I didn't even think about it, but that's actually true. You could actually give a stake in the company to somebody who can come in and kind of clean house potentially. If you're talking about small business, you could hire freelancers. So there is Upwork, freelance.com, and a gazillion other websites,
Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
you could get some work done for a few €100, right? Some small fixes here and there, some updates, maybe a virtual assistant that could help you out, maybe with basic rudimentary work, updating your service hours and stuff like that. But at some point, if you want it to be a true part of your business, then you should approach it as a integral part of the business. So basically you will have to invest sooner or later. You will have to make it a crucial part of your business, or otherwise you'll be just doubling and will not really get any results, right?
Yeah. So and this is where a lot of people who approach us,
Yeah,
we are an extension to their existing business, where we feel like we take part of, yes, a lot of the dev work, the
yeah,
graphic design and SEO component, but we also are their IT department because that's a huge field that this is not what their strengths are, right?
yeah.
So once you become comfortable with the relationship, the partner that you want to
Mhm.
work with. Because yes, you'll hire all these freelancers and all the staff, but their strengths are not to the same ability as an agency, right? And
Mhm.
you're only focusing on content or dev and graphics or on page design or whatever it is. Like
Yeah,
it's only one aspect of a big picture, right? So it's the same thing as a restaurant. There's cashier front, bartenders, waitresses, concierge, then there's the cooking, then there's the line workers. There's so many facets to running a business, and then the operations, marketing, bookkeeping, accounting. It's the same thing as any business. It's the same thing. There's every function, and you have to understand the value of your time. Do you want to do it yourself or hire someone that actually has a system in place and processes that they need to earn a living too, right? You have to adjust to it and
of
be a
course.
part of your business.
Of course, of course. But what would you say, if I'm interested in SEO, you know, if I'm a local, business, they're always afraid of just paying an enormous amount of money to agencies. So, as a person who owns an agency, what would you say a small business should spend on SEO? Of course, it depends. In many cases, it could be 1,000 to 1,000,000. But what do you think, in your opinion, is like a sum that would already bring substantial changes, maybe to
Yeah,
visibility? What they should be
yeah,
kind of
just
be warming up to?
yeah. So, like, just to give you an example, we're in Canada.
Yeah,
We service everywhere in North America, Europe,
yeah.
and Australia, etc. We started at $1,000. We make it affordable for entry level small business owners to get in, right? But
Mhm.
it's a long term commitment. We do 1 year contracts, right?
Okay.
So it is a commitment, but it's also a relationship that you have to understand,
Yeah,
right? So if you're in it for the long term, then of course this is an investment, but you understand this is really to help you grow your digital presence, right? But then there's agencies in the US that start at $15,000, right?
yeah,
And they
definitely.
target personal injury lawyers or they target specific niches, which is fine. I mean, that's their business, right?
Yeah.
I want to help make it affordable help out as many people. My margins aren't the greatest, but that's what you need to look for. A good partner that are in it for the right reasons, that are in alignment with your values, right? Like there's a lot of business owners out there just money hungry, right? I actually want to help support as long as they're in the same mindset and has the same value as my own. I vet them as much as they vet me, right?
Yeah.
And I don't take on everyone. I basically let them know, like, yes, thank you for reaching out, but maybe you're not a good fit. Go look for, because they don't have the same values or mindset, or, just by our initial conversations, it wouldn't be a good fit, right? So, yeah, it's all about just understanding what your value is, what you bring to the table, and who you want to partner with, right? If it's long term, short term, if you're playing around with ads, or if you don't know if it's good business yet, figure that out. Have a good core foundation before you venture into this whole SEO space.
Yeah, that sounds really good, really solid. Thank you very much, John. It's been a pleasure. And you have a podcast about SEO, right?
Yeah,
So can you
so the
tell us
podcast,
a little bit about
yeah,
you podcasting and a little bit about your podcast? I'm sure people will appreciate, because I've seen you have quite a lot of episodes already out.
yeah, we have fun with it, right? So
Yeah.
the podcast is called Local SEO Today. Me and my VP of sales, we did work at Yellow Pages together, and combined, we work with over 10,000 local small, medium-sized business owners. So what we bring to the table is more business experience and
Hmm.
knowledge and insight, and more practical business experience versus the technical aspect of what SEO is about. Because anyone can read and learn it online. But in
Yeah.
terms of business, that's what we're trying to gear towards and target. Business owners trying to learn and understand this whole space and navigate through it. So yeah, it's called Local SEO Today. We have over 150 plus episodes. And really, we're just providing value, right? Giving people good snippets and content that they can use for their own business and purpose.
Yeah. Good. All right. Thank you very much, John. It's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate having you on the podcast. Thank you very
Thank,
much. See you. Take care.
thank you, Artem. Thank you for
Thank you.
having me.
Bye bye.
Have a great day. Bye.